Hi. Can you hear me? I'm going to try to make sure I can see the chat. Oh, there we are. Make sure my volume is off for that. Yes, you can hear me. Yay. All right. Woohoo. Hey, that didn't take as long this time to figure out the tech. Maybe I just need to do this more often. All right. I think we're ready. So you can hear me, you can see my iPad, and you can see me. This is a new thing for me to do this on a regular basis with my face at the same time. Hi, Angela. Hi, everybody. Hi, Deb. Nothing like another last minute live. Sometimes I just have to do it when I'm in the mood. So hopefully that's okay with people. I figured, you know, the recording is there anyways. So, you know, if you can't make it live, the recording will be there later. And sometimes it just has to be this kind of last minute. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I picked this brush and then I realized, you know, it's a little bit involved in that we have to make a tree brush first. So we're gonna make a tree stamp brush. Let me look at the camera. We're gonna start with a tree stamp, a super simple one. So one of the things that you should know about my lives if you haven't followed along is that I try to go at a pace where you can follow along. If you're a super beginner, it's kind of hard to follow any live, but you should be able to follow along. And the trick is to try not to make it perfect while you're following along. You can always come back to something and fix things later, but sometimes it's easy to kind of get stuck on a certain step as the instructor is moving forward. So I'll try to talk you through those types of things that are going to be easy to come back and change later. Also, I'm freezing. So I have a hot water bottle on my feet, but my hands are cold, and I'm hoping that, yeah, I'll just move the hot water bottle to my lap if I need to. All right. So this is a newsletter freebie. Well, a version of this brush is a newsletter freebie recently. So definitely go grab those. I have a whole set of, where are they? Winter patterns. But I added this bonus brush for my members. And I had given you this one in the freebies, and it's a little bit different. And let me just show you what's different about it so we can talk about how you might do something similar to that later if you decide to. So in the freebies, I'm just gonna choose like a dark indigo here. This pattern brush has a color. I'm gonna leave this white exposed here. It has a color in this background as well. So the white background comes through where the snow is. In a pattern brush or any stamp brush even, when you're creating your stamp shapes, black is going to show up at full opacity of whatever color you've chosen. And then lighter shades of that as you go up and up and up. They are just different opacities of that color you've chosen. So they look like different colors, but they're not. It's just, if you changed the background color on this, and this is the file where I created all those brushes, you'll be able to see that this gray now is what color the snow is, because the snow is just the background coming through. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so I'll show you the Misty brush with no snow, because Then you can change your background color. You can add snow if you want. You're not stuck with the snow. And then I'll tell you how I did the snow one as well. So we're going to go to a new canvas. Let's see, you don't need too many layers. So if you have, right now we're limited on layers. So create a canvas size that is square, is sRGB, and is at least 12 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to go to 12 inches here. All right. The wrench tool, we're going to turn on symmetry for this tree. So go to the wrench icon and turn on drawing guide, and then edit drawing guide and go to symmetry. And it will default to this vertical symmetry, which is what you need. And then tap the little arrow. So brushes, we have a white background and a black shape, or the opposite, black and white. All right, so that is on. The symmetry is on for that layer. It says assisted, and we're gonna choose a black. Now, most of you should have my Potpourri free newsletter brush set by now. If you don't, think about a thick, chunky brush that you can make a messy tree with. I am using Potpourri, and I'm coming down to this creamy chalk brush, and since it's on symmetry, it's going to do both sides. I want it to be pretty tall and not very wide. And you know, if you just think about it getting a little wider and wider as you go down. And I also am going to turn off symmetry in a little bit so that we can add some asymmetrical parts to this. But this is kind of the general shape that I'm going for. And I'm making it super messy. So just kind of, this is one of the things that you don't want to get hung up on. You want to just kind of make a quick tree and come back and fix it later. When we're going to be copying this image and pasting it in to make a stamp brush. So when you come back and change this later, you can just copy the image again. Once you come back and fix the tree, you just copy it again and paste it into the same brush that you already made. So it's super simple to change later. So just get a messy tree on there. You can put some, you know, I'm not going to do anything right here at this second because I want to turn off symmetry. So I've got a very symmetrical brush, and it's always weird along that line there. And now I'm going to take symmetry off of that layer so I can tap the layer and just turn it off right here. And now I'm just going to spend 30 seconds just kind of going in and doing a little bit different things on each side. And you can kind of fix that weird middle where things get really weird. Remember, the brush that we're making is going to be viewed pretty small, the pattern brush. So you don't need to worry too much about this. And then for the branches down here, we can just kind of come out a little bit like this. And whoops, that's more like a too squiggly. Let me know if you're following along. No, don't let me know, because then you have to stop and type. But definitely ask questions along the way. I will check the chat every couple minutes or so. I don't like to interrupt the lesson too often. All right. I think I'm happy with my tree. You can zoom out and see if you need to fill any spaces. I might make it a little skinnier at the top. The top of your tree is going to be really noticeable in the stamps that we use this for the other brush, but we can also edit. And that's pretty close to the edge up there. I am going to select my tree and just kind of bring it down a little. Though I have magnetics on, but it doesn't really matter if this is perfectly centered now that you're done with the symmetry part. All right, we're gonna 3-finger swipe down and copy all. We want to copy the white and the black. So it's going to copy everything it can see when you do copy all. It never copies those lines for the grid lines and stuff, so don't worry about that. All right, we're going to create a new brush set. So tap the brushes, and you can move this brush set later, so don't worry about which brush library you're in right now. Tap the plus sign right here and create a new set. And what do you want to call it? I'll just call it trees. And it's up there. And now we need to create a new brush in that set. So tap this plus sign again and create a new brush. Now we need to paste that shape into this shape. So go to shape, go to edit, and go to import. And if this paste doesn't work, we're going to tap paste here. There's times, and I don't remember the circumstances, sometimes paste doesn't work. You can always save your image to your camera roll and then import the photo right here. But we can tap paste and it's going to switch to a white background here. Tap the screen once to get rid of that menu, and then 2-finger tap to invert this. We want a black background. Don't tap anything over here or this won't save. Tap the check mark here. And now your tree is your shape source. A brush is just a whole bunch of shape sources in a row. So now this is a whole bunch of trees. All right, so we can go to stroke path and separate them. Watch that as it goes up. See all your trees now? You can just bump it all the way up. You could leave it a little low and have a tree brush like that too. You can still stamp with it when it's like that. So it doesn't need to go all the way up. All right. And now you can see if I have light pressure, it's faded. And if I have harder pressure, it's darker. For what we're doing, I don't want that to be the case. I just want it always to be full opacity. So go to Apple Pencil and just turn off this opacity. So for pressure, we have, the pressure is not going to affect opacity at all. It's always going to be full opacity. And then we want to make it bigger. So go to properties and we can just max that size out like this. And if we go to preview, we can view it like a brush if you want, or you can use stamp preview, made a really big stamp, and you can just change that size like this. And later you can come back and put your information in about this brush. If you put your name here and here, but you don't put a photo there, it will be editable by somebody else if you sell your brush, give your brush away. So get an image in there. And I do have a YouTube video about making like a logo stamp and a watermark stamp. And you can just use the image that you make from something like that. You just need to make something on a square and it'll fit in that circle. So just grab the image from your camera roll. When you tap on this, you can choose camera roll. And we used to be able to edit our brushes there, but we can't anymore, or the brush name there, but we can't anymore. You could also create a new reset point right here later when you're totally set on this brush. So let's just tap the check mark and see how it's looking. So it looks great. Pressing and holding here is how you rename that brush. So I'm going to tap rename. And I'll say fir tree, apply. So now after I name it, then I would go back in and create a reset point, assuming you have all of your name and photo in that section already as well. All right, so now you have your tree brush. Everybody doing okay? We just made a quick tree brush using symmetry and then turning symmetry off to kind of make it a little less symmetrical. And if you can find, if you're late and you can find a tree stamp of any sort, then you can keep following along. I didn't know about the image in the brushes to keep it from being editable. Yeah, it's been that way for a long time. I was really hoping this big update we just had was going to fix that, but it didn't. Also, back here in the shape source, when you edit this, just so you know, you can rotate here. Yeah, whenever I find a brush maker who's doesn't have their image locked in there, I try to let them know. And I definitely have some old brushes, really old brushes that don't have my image in there as well. All right, just giving people a minute to catch up, check in the chat. Hello from the Netherlands. Okay, we can just stay in this same canvas. I'm going to turn the tree off and add another layer. And now I'm going to come over to my brush here for a sec. Well, that took a while to load. So we are doing this in stages. So we're going to do, there's probably a couple ways to do this as I just looked down at it. I made this dark row, this dark one first, and then I made the middle gray, and then I made the lighter gray. So that's what I'm going to show you. You could probably do them all in one stage. And I'll go ahead and mention when you would do that. So we're going to start with this row, and I wanted to point out, do you see this void right here and right here? That really catches your eye. That really catches your eye when you're using this stamp, this pattern brush. So as we're putting our trees in the row for this first layer, just kind of have a little bit of a variety with the base of your trees. And then that won't stand out so much. It'll be a little bit more broken up looking. Is this the one I was on? Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn off my line here. So just turn drawing guide off. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of put my darkest set of trees is going to be black, and it's going to be a little lower down here. So I can stamp, and I'm thinking about the other tiers, right? We need room for the other tiers back here. So I don't want to make my brushes huge, or my trees huge. So I'm going to put it on freeform. And I'm gonna, adjust them a little bit like this. Oh, I have magnetics on. And I don't want any of my shape to go off the edge. And I'm gonna stamp trees on new layers each time. And I'm gonna adjust the size, even though I can adjust the size here, like what I just did. I'm gonna flip it sometimes. And don't worry, we're gonna do a little bit of erasing of each of these trees too. So it's okay that they're all really identical. We can change them up in a sec. Maybe a much smaller one. So this first stage you're going to be making a repeat pattern. Hopefully I didn't scare anybody away. We have to make a seamless repeat pattern with our trees. So we're just making a stripe across to those, so we don't have to move things to the four corners. We're just going to be moving things left and right, so that's kind of nice. And really, in each stage, I just need to kind of fill in this middle section. So I've got a variety down here in where the bottom of the trees are, variety up here. I have some overlap. And now I want to erase a little bit of kind of that misty look at the bottom. And I also want to change up a little bit here and there on these branches. So let's do the erasing first. I'm on this one right here. I am going to stay in the Potpourri brush set and choose Milky Chalky Larapuna. You could choose an airbrush, just something really soft. And I'm just kind of getting some kind of, you don't have to erase it entirely, but you can erase the whole bottom of the tree. but I just want to erase a bit of and give it that misty look. And we're going to merge these later. All right, now with this one, and a little bit uneven, so this misty one is coming up over here. And this one. This might be a harder stage for you to come back and fix later. So kind of zoom out and look at your trees. Do you like how the mist looks? This kind of has a line right here, so I'm gonna come back in and get that to go away. All right, and I can go ahead and merge those. And now I'm going to go back to Potpourri for my brush, and the brush that I used on my tree itself, and just kind of make a little change here and there. I think the tops of the trees are the most noticeable that we've used a stamp brush. So you can kind of change things up here and there so they don't all look identical. The rest, I don't think anybody, I can see this and this, they look really, really identical here. So maybe I'll, you know, just add a little tiny extra branch. Don't focus too much on that step. You saw how many trees that whole pattern brush has. So it's just a quick little change you can make. All right, so when we move this whole image to the left and the right, we want the whole canvas size to be included. So if you select it right now, the boundary box is around just the trees that you have on the screen. So we need to, on this layer that your trees are on, and I like to choose a bright color that is very obvious so I remember to erase it later. We're just gonna put a little corner mark up here and down here. So I have ink to the top, the right, the bottom, and the left. And now when I press the arrow, it's selecting the whole entire canvas. And I should have mentioned, if you're in other parts of the world and your canvas size is in centimeters, for example, you'll want to make sure that you have an even number of pixels. So if you go to the wrench icon and go to canvas and canvas information, and then dimensions, any size you've chosen will convert it to pixels right here. And there is a common European size, and I can't remember what it is, that converts to an odd number of pixels. And so when we're cutting in repeat patterns, we're cutting things evenly. When we're sliding things around, it's snapping right to the middle, and it needs to be an even number to have all the pieces be the same size, to divide evenly by 2 and 4. All right. So I want to duplicate this. So I'm going to swipe left and tap duplicate. And I'm going to select one, select snapping, and turn snapping on. You do not need magnetics. I keep distance at max. I think velocity defaults to 5. I don't know what velocity does. So distance at max just means it's not going to snap to every little object that it can tell is around it on other layers. All right, and now we're going to slide one to the left. You'll see it snap really quickly, really easily, I should say. So when you're holding it, you can see the gold bars in each direction. And while it's still selected, if I were to tap on the screen accidentally, it would nudge it in that direction 1 pixel, and you might not even notice it. So you want to deselect it right away. All right, and go to the other one, select, and move it to the other side, and deselect. So now we have the repeating part over here. We just need to fill in here. We can, because our corner marks are not in our way, we can go ahead and merge those. They're not blocking any of our trees. Sometimes you need to erase your corner marks before you merge, but I merged my layers, and now I'm going to just select freehand and grab these little marks and get rid of them. You can erase them too. right. And I'm just going to keep that on its own layer for now. I'm going to go back to black. I'm going to go back to my tree brush and go to a new layer and just kind of fill in this area. Trying to make sure things don't look too even, like spaced out evenly. I might flip this tree because it looks identical to that tree, even though we're changing stuff later. Same thing, go to a new layer, same thing we just did. Maybe make a tiny tree. Oh, my snapping is on, which is making it hard for me to be precise here, so I can turn that off again. Just squeeze this in. Go to a new layer. Don't go off the edge, remember? You never go off the edge with the repeat patterns. All right. And erasing our Misty look down here. Ooh, I think I might erase a lot of that one. How's everybody doing? All right, and then we can merge all of that. We're gonna go ahead and spend 30 seconds on making these trees look a little bit different from each other. So I went back to that chalky brush. It's almost not small enough. Oops. All right. That is a repeating pattern right there. And we're, I think because of timing, we'll do 2 layers instead of 3. So the pattern brush that I made has 3 layers of gray. But if I just show you one more layer, you'll know how to do the 3rd layer. All right, so now I'm going to go to a layer under this. And I'm going to choose a lighter gray. So you can go back to your tree brush and just test it. Remembering that a lighter gray is going to be, you know, if you choose blue, that's just going to be a lighter blue. So you want the value to be a little noticeable, but still have enough options to go even lighter for a 3rd layer or maybe even a 4th layer. So now we're going to do the same steps. Thinking about where you want each tree. Remembering to go to a new layer each time. And also, since these trees are further away, they're going to essentially be smaller as you get further back. That will just help the eye see them as farther away. Farther away? Further away. I don't know. And erase. Erase my Misty area here. Which one was that? You can just toggle them on to see which one. So with less mist and those being much closer to the dark layer, it looks like a more dense forest. So you could have them further up the screen here. They'll look further away, more mist. It'll look more misty. All right, and then we can stay on that same gray. We can merge those 4 trees and come back to the brush you used to make the tree. Do that step with making them look a little different. Now these ones are really hidden, so it's not going to be as obvious. I'm not going to worry about it too much actually, although I do have this one branch on my stamp that I don't like over here. I mean, it doesn't, they're too flat right there. All right, I am going to turn off this black layer for this step where we're moving everything around. All right, so we're gonna go to a bright color, put our corner marks on, just making sure they're big enough to have ink on all 4 edges of your canvas. And swipe left, duplicate, select one, turn snapping back on, slide one to the left, slide one to the right. If you aren't getting those gold lines super easily, it's probably because you can, you'll need to turn one layer off at a time, but, or one layer on at a time, have all the other layers off. But for this, it should work if you have your corner marks. Merge those layers since our corner marks aren't bumping into any trees, and select those and get them right off. So here's one thing that is another step that you probably wouldn't have to do if we did this a slightly different way. So we moved those trees to the left and the right, and now our black layer isn't moved, right? Our black layer is in the position it was when we made those lighter trees. So it looks good, but if you really want it to be lined up with how you just made that gray layer, we can go ahead and move the black layer again. All right, so we're just gonna put quick little corner marks on the black layer. Duplicate it. Ooh, let's turn the gray layer off for this. Slide the black layer left, slide the black layer right, merge, get rid of our little corner marks. And now turn our gray layer on again, and our black and our gray are lined up how we intended them to be. Oh no, can other people hear me? You might want to refresh your browser. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, good. All right. Somebody lost sound. Okay, so now we can do our gray some more right in here. Probably, oops, go back to my tree stamp. And to gray. I did draw some blue on there, so I'm going to clear it. All right. Yeah, snapping is on again. I think I'm just adding 2 more. One tiny one. Erase, erase. Merge all of my gray, go in and edit my tree, making them look different. I think they're okay. And we're going to do that one more time. Oh, I said I was not gonna do that one more time, didn't I? Let's do it one more time. So I'm gonna go to a lighter gray. Now let's not do it one more time. Let's not do it one more time. So if you were to have another row of trees, you would go to yet another gray and do that same thing. Go under the other ones and do the same thing we just did. I'm gonna go backwards for a second. You don't have to follow along with this part, but you know how we had to move the black again when we were making the gray? So if you started out with your black layer and your gray layer, let's say this was your initial black layer, and you did all of your, erasing for mist and all of that, you could, on new layers, under your black layers, you could go ahead and do your gray layer here as well and do the erasing. And then put your corner marks on and then do the duplicating and moving. That's probably a much more efficient way to do it. All right. But now we have our trees. This is all going to be sky. This is going to merge with this down here, so it's all going to be one big space. If for the snowy one that I showed you at the beginning, if you want to have that snow look, what you do is you have a color, a really light gray as the background. But that is going to, I just added a layer underneath all of this. That is going to be a color, whatever color you choose. So that makes it a little inflexible when you're using it as a pattern somewhere. So then you would add snow on top of this. So you would, you would have to make a snow seamless repeat pattern. So I would go to white here. And if you go to the Procreate set at the very bottom, I use this Starry Night brush for most snowy things that I do. So you would have to make a snowy repeat pattern, not right on that gray layer, sorry, on top of your trees. And I do have other lessons about making a full screen repeat pattern like this. But everywhere where there's snow is going to be no color at all, and the white background of your canvas is going to show through those dots. So that's kind of fun. But that is a newsletter freebie. Let's see, where was that? Ornaments? No. Winter patterns. That's this mountain trees brush. So if you want to go look at that, you can go to, you can go to the grain, and you can see here, if I edit the grain and invert it, this is what my pattern looked like when I created it. And I can't zoom in on this, but you can see some of my trees are really, really light in that. So now we need to make a pattern brush with our pattern. That's why I didn't want to keep going. All right. So I have a white background, although it looks really gray right now. It is white. I have a white background. I have my couple layers of trees. They are repeating perfectly on both sides. And I want to 3-finger swipe down and copy all. The snowy brush, Cassandra, is in the Potpourri brush set. It's in a lot of other sets too, for classes and stuff. I've had it around for a long time. It's a great brush. All right, you got your copy all. Go to your new brush set, trees, and we're going to create a new brush. Create new brush. And this one is going in the grain. Edit, import, paste, tap to get rid of that menu, and 2-finger tap to invert. Ooh, so pretty. Tap the check mark. We're not done yet though. This is what it looks like in Washington State, Western Washington, if you've never been here. I have one of these outside my backyard. It's not in my yard, but it is really close to my yard. All right, you got yours pasted in. So for this one, in Apple Pencil, maybe you do want to keep the opacity up so that when you have light pressure, it is not as dark, and then firmer pressure, it's darker. But you can go ahead and turn that down if that's not the case. For our gray tones that we have, we want to go to rendering and go to light glaze. So you're gonna be able to see over here. See how firm, how white that is? You go to light glaze, you can now see those varying opacities that we used in our grain source. Okay, we don't really need to do anything else here in rendering. You can go to shape and not have this really hard edge here. You could just go in import, source library, and pick one of Procreate's shapes, like a softer edge. Tap done. It's more noticeable when we're back over in the canvas. For grain, you can also come down here to offset jitter and turn it off. Right now, when you pick up your pencil and put it back down again, it doesn't leave off, it doesn't pick up where it left off. The pattern doesn't, although that does look like it is doing that. So turn off offset jitter and then it will line up every time you pick up. Probably still don't want to with the varying opacities in the trees, but that's just a nice thing to know. And then you can look at scale, but before you look at scale, which is just gonna make the trees bigger, come down to properties and look at your brush size. So maybe bump that way up and maybe bump minimum back up too. We'll look at preview later because all of these numbers affect the preview. We wanna get these other numbers right before we look at the preview. Tap the check mark. And now let's just turn all these off and go to a fresh layer and pick a color and test our brush. So you can see that it's quite small. So even when I bring up my brush, oh, it's the same size. So your brush size is changing, but the pattern size isn't. So you see how this tiny brush is going to be the same size for my trees. So if you go back into your brush and you go back to grain, this zoom, I don't know why it's called zoom, but it's cropped, and that's the setting that you need to change. So if you go all the way down, it says follow size, and that means the size of the scale is going to change with the size of your brush. And then all of this in between is just kind of a middle ground for that. How much do you want it to change every time you change the size of your brush? So let's undo all of that. And now you can see the trees getting bigger as you go up. So the maximum size is not that big, and the minimum size is way too small. So I'm going to go back into my settings, go to properties, and bump up the minimum size. I'm never ever going to use it that small. I want to go ahead. You don't always want to max out this one, but just kind of keep going back and forth and playing with these. Minimum. Oh, I might use it that small, so I'll leave that minimum. Maximum. I'll probably never use it bigger than that, so that works. And then in between is kind of fun to check too. All of this space is there because of our initial design. This space is combining with this space here because it's repeating. If you just took this and duplicated it and put it down here, so it's combining all that white space. So when you add another row of trees, that gap is going to be smaller. This gap right here. All right, I think I like the size of my brush and how big and how small they get. Yeah, all right. So now I can go back in. If you need to, you can still bump up the scale. So in grain, this scale right here is also something that will affect the size of everything. So if you bump up this scale right here, then your scale in here is going to be much bigger. I think a lot of my brushes, my scale is typically around 25. All right. So now we can go into preview. Oh, one more trick. If you really need a pattern, this is just trees, right? So you may not need it to be super big. But if you really have maxed out your sizes here and you want it to be bigger and your scale, you would like the scale where it is or whatever, but you want the brush itself to get bigger, you can bump up your spacing. So I'm just going to show you, don't do this part, but if you go to max right here and then you bump up your spacing, the max, let's say your max is so, not quite as big as you want the brush to be. I'm just going to bump up spacing like 2%. And if I come back down to property, oh, that didn't work. I just lied. Let's try it, bumping up a little bit more. Come back down to property. Oh, well, this may be something that changed. So normally when you bump up your spacing here, and that's the spacing between your circle shapes, then your properties, you would have the ability to bump it up even more. I'm wondering if they changed that in the update. So 1194, 1194, yeah, interesting. Well, I don't remember what that was at, but now, once you get your settings how you want them, you can go to preview and you can, if you want to view this as a stamp, I don't know why you would with a pattern brush, but you can adjust your preview size, and that's what you're going to be seeing here so that you can tell what it is. And I don't quite follow these things yet. These are new. And about this brush, you're going to name all of that. Tap this hard, not hard, but press and hold, rename. Fir tree pattern, apply, or whatever creative name. Remember that we have search now. If you pull down, you have the ability to search for a brush. So you're going to want to name your brushes with at least one word like tree, that when you're searching for a brush in your search tree, you want that brush to pop up. Or the brush set name also shows up in the search. So you'll see Procreate's new brushes. All the brushes have crazy names, but the brush sets are named well for doing a search on like watercolor or whatever. So that works. So you probably don't need both to have a good search word, but one or the other. Fun, fun. Any questions? Fir tree forest. It's beautiful. Yes, I hate naming brushes. So mine are always like pencil-like brush. It just describes the thing. So yeah, I did get Misty mountain trees. So that was about as creative as I get with brush names. I make a lot of brushes and then, oh yeah, and then I have to name them all. When you're making these brushes, so let's say you've got all these settings perfectly set for your stamp brush, your tree stamp, and this first pattern brush that you make sure you get your information added at the end, your name and your photo in there. And then you can just duplicate it. So anytime now, well, not now, but once you get this stuff in there and you want to make another stamp brush, you just duplicate it. And all you have to do is go in and change the shape. So, and then of course the name, right? But then you don't have to do this every single time. And that gets tedious when you're making a lot of brushes. So, and the same with pattern brushes. You might, although after saying that, I do think it is important that you do it a few times and get the hang of it. And then it's easier to remember next time. But yeah, because you might kind of come back to this, go, what were the settings? What were the settings? And so Helen's saying, I cannot seem to get the white fine enough to not smother the trees. Which white? Like when you're erasing the misty part? Yeah, I don't know. It's, you know, it takes a little practice. So you might get all the way to this point right here and go, oh, I really should have done XYZ. And you can either start over or you can go backwards. Like if you don't want these two layers so close together, this is where magnetics comes in handy. I can just take my gray layer and slide it up. So I'm on my gray layer here and I'm gonna select it. If snapping is on, it's really gonna try to force me into certain positions. But if just magnetics is on, then, and I like to do a little bit of a fast move initially when I do this, you're gonna see a blue line. When I move it up, you're gonna see a blue line. And if you move it slowly initially, it really wants to do this. But this blue line, if you are careful and you slide that layer up and you make sure you let it go when that blue line is still perfectly vertical, and then deselect. And then maybe come in and do a little bit more erasing, more mist. I know you've merged your trees already. If you're editing at this stage though, don't do anything on the edges. But you can now 3-finger swipe down, copy all, and paste that new version into the grain source. And maybe you want to duplicate these layers and play with a duplicate of the layers instead of the originals, just in case you screw things up. But that is an option to, you know, be able to play around a little bit more with some fixes that you might want to do. Or if you're looking at your pattern and you're going, wow, these look really solid. These need a little more air, right? It's a very solid stamp. You could come back over to the initial source, the initial layers that we made, and try to erase a little. Or you could go all the way back to the beginning and make a new tree or fix your tree. Brush making is time consuming, so especially if you're trying to make them really good ones, right? So try not to get too frustrated. It's just a lot of back and forth. All right. If there's no more questions, then we are done. I can't believe I made it in less than an hour. And I'm warm. My hot water bottle on my feet warmed me up. All right. I'm not seeing, I know there's a lag, so I'm just checking to make sure we don't have more questions. Thank you all for coming. I hope you have fun with brush making. We made a stamp and a pattern, so that was kind of that was a complicated one. It really, And if you get the hang of this, it's not that big of a difference to do a full page repeat pattern. You just, instead of moving your things left and right, you do 4 duplicates and you move 1 to each corner. So you still do the corner marks. That's how I do it. The reason I do it this way is because it keeps your pattern separate from the background. So when you are done in the end, whether it's for a brush or for fabric, you can change the background color independently. Thank you, thank you. Yes, this is recording, so it will be right on YouTube as soon as I end this video. All right. Thanks everybody. Bye.